Do you focus on one thing and get really good at it, or do you become a multi-dimensional person? Today, I want to answer this question because I've heard it get talked about quite a lot recently. A lot of people out there on social media and the business space are saying, focus on one thing, one industry, and get really good at that one thing and drive that to success, right? Drive that and become the best in one thing to become successful, right? And while I do believe that's important, I do believe that you have to have more well-rounded knowledge than that, right? And the big trap that a lot of people fall into is, they get really successful in one industry. I've seen a lot of very successful people, do this. People who have been around in my life that I've just experienced. And they get really successful in one area, and then they forget all the other areas. They forget all the other areas that are important. Becoming well-rounded, of having knowledge in so many different areas about understanding how the world works, right? They just know their industry, and they're really good in their industry, but they don't understand the world at large, right? And the people that I look up to the most are multi-dimensional people, people who understand a lot about the world. They understand not just their business, but business in general. They understand the dynamics of all businesses, and they understand the dynamics of how the world works, about how, the rise and decline of companies. Ray Dalio is really making me think about this topic right now because he is such a well-rounded person. I've read both his book Principles and The Changing World Order. Principles a couple times. Actually, both of them a couple times. Because Ray Dalio is an example of a man who is multidimensional. He understands world history. He understands the cycles of, the rise and decline of empires, right? How the U.S. is seemingly on an economic decline and China's on the rise. And him making that argument and understanding how economies work. I mean, imagine presidents call this guy up, right? Presidents of countries call this guy up, say, Ray, we need some help with economic policy, right? He also is big into meditation, has a spiritual side figured out, right? Cares about his relationships, right? Like, he's a multi-dimensional person. And, that's what I want to be. I don't want to be someone who's just successful in one industry financially, right? I'm more in it to make global impact, to have influence in world events, right? And you got to think that big. And if you think that big, then don't listen to people who are just successful financially and who avoid the rest of that stuff, right? Because most of the time they're avoiding that stuff because they're scared. They are scared. They don't want to get involved in all the major global, conflicts. They don't want to share their opinion. They're afraid to speak out. If they do speak out, they'll get in trouble, right? This is the main thing that you need to think about. Like, what do you want? Do you want to just be super wealthy? If that's the goal, which is for most people want to be super wealthy. Most people don't want to get involved in so much around the world. But if you do want to do that, if you want to have massive influence, you have to be multidimensional. You have to understand so much. You can't just understand your industry and get wealthy, right? Even someone like Bezos, right, rode his one business to become the wealthiest man in the world, but he knows a lot more than about just Amazon. He knows a lot. And in most cases, to become that successful, to achieve that level of wealth, you just have to be multidimensional. Elon Musk, multidimensional. All of these guys, they understand how the world works at large. And they understand how to play the game. And that's why they were able to get to the top, right? So while I do think to become wealthy, right, you do need to ride one vehicle to the top. That can't be your only focus, right? You need to learn outside of that. You need to understand how the world works, the dynamics of the world. And once you understand that, man, things just start to change in your mind and shift, right? Like my mind is just shifting every day. It's like I'm finding out something new about how the game is played, about how these guys play the game. People like George Soros, people like Ray Dalio, people like Bezos, Musk, Buffett, Gates, whoever else you can think of who's super wealthy, right? Like these guys, Zuckerberg, these guys play the game differently. And some of them just had a great idea. Zuckerberg had a great idea, and now he's turned it into, a massive enterprise. But a lot of these guys, Bezos is unbelievable. I think he's the best entrepreneur of our time. I would read his letters to shareholders. He had a vision, and his understanding of how the world worked made his business successful, right? He was multidimensional. Multidimensional means understanding everything, understanding the dynamics of business, of health, of relationships, of communication, of all areas. And that's what I mean. So start thinking to yourself, do I just want to be wealthy, or I want to have massive global influence? And if your answer is, I want to have influence on the planet, I want to sit down with presidents, I want to get in rooms with people that most people could never dream of getting in rooms with, then you need to start listening to guys who are in that position, and listen only to them, because they're the only ones who've gotten there, right? So why would you listen to someone who isn't there, right? People have valuable advice, but I would say listen to the advice, a majority of the advice that you're taking in from people who are where you want to be and who you want to even surpass in some ways, right? So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope this made you think about, just whether or not you just want wealth or not. Like, do you want wealth, or do you want to make, a massive impact in this world? Like, do you want to be in history books? Do you want to really influence this world? If you do, man, get started learn from the greats. I want to thank you for being here today. If you want to learn more about me and what I do, you can click the links in my description. And yeah, really grateful for you being here. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.